Season 3A of Amphibia left us with a lot of questions. Now, I have said quite a bit about my opinions on Season 3A in the past, so I will try not to belabor them, but the basic truth of the matter is that the fact that Season 3A chose to spend so much time on lighthearted Adventure of the Day stories, these little self-contained episodic adventures, means that the show now has a lot less time to wrap up all the tensions and all the fraught relationships between various characters in the last 10 or so 22-minute segments of the season. The show has less time to spend on the world of Amphibia that it so vividly sketched out throughout the first two seasons, the lore of the show, and most importantly, the fraught but compassionate and tender bonds between Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. Now, I'm not one of those people who believes that every show needs to provide an answer to every little question to be satisfying or cathartic. The demand that a lot of fans make on shows to explain everything to them and not leave any points of mystery or ambiguity is quite childish. And the shows that indulge in that temptation to over-explain everything and never leave anything ambiguous or fraught or tense or not completely resolved, those shows are childish as well. Not every I needs to be dotted, not every T needs to be crossed. The focus needs to be on the emotions and ideas and situations that the work conveys. Not every question needs to be answered. The questions that do need to be answered are those that the show has set up and then just ignored. This can be quite frustrating, especially when these questions are about that which is right at the heart of the show's lore. Think about the prophecy that Andreas is trying to undo. The prophecy is not something I care about nearly as much as I care about the bonds between Anne, Sasha, and Marcy, but it is a major plot point the show has set up and hitherto not quite delivered on, so I hope it does deliver on it, or else what would be the point? It would be a waste. It would not be intriguingly ambiguous and enigmatic, it would just be frustratingly vague and insubstantial. And there is a major difference between the two categories. How exactly did Anne, Marcy, and Sasha's coming to this world fulfill a prophecy exactly? Their coming to this world seemed quite random. If Anne hadn't picked up that box per Sasha and Marcy's instructions, and if Marcy hadn't seen the box in the first place, none of this would have happened. It does not really seem fated to me. And what does it mean that Andreas is struggling to undo the prophecy? Has he succeeded yet? If not, what would it mean for him to succeed in undoing the prophecy? If we are to be emotionally engaged in these stakes, we need to know what the stakes are. They need to be made clear. As for the ending of the show, I hope that they devote a lot of time to wrapping up the fraught, tense, anxious, caring, compassionate, tender bonds between Anne, Marcy, and Sasha. These are three people who love each other deeply, and they are also three people who have made each other's lives quite difficult. That happens sometimes. I hope the show acknowledges that Anne has not been the perfect friend either. Sasha and Marcy are acutely aware of their shortcomings, to the point of even being a little overly aware and being a little anxious and paranoid because of that awareness. Sasha and Marcy have made mistakes, but so has Anne. She became so furious at Sasha that she was ready to seriously hurt someone who was not fighting back, someone who tried everything she could to convey that she had a lot of important information to give to Anne. And then there's the case of Marcy, who is so quiet and timid and pliant. She does what she's told. She's a bit submissive in that way. And Anne kind of pushes her around in the same way that Sasha kind of pushed Anne around. And Anne does not really seem aware of this. Marcy, of course, does not object when Anne decides to spend so much time with her frog family in Utopia instead of her, but it is a problem that Anne seems so ambivalent about the chance to spend serious quality time with a person that she is very close to, and a person that she didn't really know was alive. And this has negative consequences. Anne abandons Marcy, Marcy is left vulnerable, and Andreas takes advantage of that vulnerability. Had Anne been a little more empathetic and a little more aware of Marcy's real feelings and longings that were hiding beneath that facade of, oh, just do whatever you want, Anne, it's okay with me, none of this would have happened. Anne has indeed been growing and maturing, so I hope that she is ready and willing to admit her faults just as much as the other characters are willing to admit theirs. When the show takes time to depicting their friendship at the end of the show, it has a fine line to walk. It needs to demonstrate that these people really care about each other and that they can be good for each other, which the show has repeatedly argued, while also acknowledging that they have grown apart in some ways, that they have not really understood each other as much as they really could have. Their friendships have endured a lot of tensions, and those tensions need to be given space. Those tensions need to be acknowledged and really considered in a serious and honest way. The question is not so much, are these three going to remain friends after the end of the show? Because I'm pretty sure the answer to that is yes. The real question is, how are all the tensions and anxieties their friendships have endured going to affect those friendships going forward? They are going to need to understand each other better if they are going to be friends going forward as they move into later adolescence and then into adulthood. They need to really establish a more comprehensive and more thoughtful understanding of each other that's not just based on false perceptions that they apply to the other person, that they wrongly attach to these other people. They have been consistently proven wrong about who each other are. Anne originally saw Sasha as Marcy sees Anne, as this bold protector, but also as someone whose authority should not be challenged, even though this authority is quite questionable. Just as Sasha doesn't really respect Anne's autonomy and her own ability to make her own life decisions, the same is true for Anne and Marcy. Anne acknowledges this is a problem, just as Sasha acknowledges it's a problem, but it's still hard to work through those obstacles. Still hard to break those patterns. Anne goes through a lot of stages in how she views Sasha. She initially sees Sasha's authority as unimpeachable, and when she realizes how flawed Sasha is, she goes a little bit too far in the other direction and starts believing Sasha is this callous, harsh manipulator who just wants to cause her pain. And of course, that's not true either. She gradually needs to grow into seeing Sasha as she really is. That being someone who genuinely and deeply cares for Anne and Marcy's well-being, but also someone who's seriously flawed and broken and trying to overcome her own rather loveless childhood, it seems like. And Sasha has a hard time letting go of her desire to control other people, even though she believes that what she wants for other people might not always be what they want for themselves. I personally am quite concerned that the show will not have enough time after the defeat of Darcy to depict the repairing of the friendships between these three with the level of nuance and sophistication that these bonds really deserve. Still, I can hope that the show at least does a decent job. And while we are talking about the ending of the show, we should think about whether these three are going to stay in Amphibia or stay on Earth. To a certain extent, this is a key question at the heart of any Portal Fantasy series. But in Amphibia, it's even more crucial than that because it is a question that has driven a lot of the tensions and conflicts between these three girls. It has caused a lot of the more interesting drama and tension in this show. Sasha and Marcy do not have as caring and compassionate of a home life as Anne does. Anne doesn't really realize that. She just assumes that everyone wants to go home as much as she does. She does not quite comprehend that others have different relationships to Amphibia. That for them it's not just a fun adventure world, it's a place where they can have a healthy, nurturing, comfortable, really fulfilling existence in a way that they really could not on Earth. Sasha and Marcy have legitimate reasons for not being as passionate about going home as Anne does, and I hope that the show does not just take Anne's perspective and decide that everyone should stay on Earth. Their home environments were really disempowering and created a lot of resentment and bitterness in them, and I hope the show is willing to at least acknowledge that to a certain degree. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. I'm really interested to see where Amphibia goes in Season 3B. I hope it takes the time to focus on the existential drama and confusion and yearnings of Sasha and Marcy instead of spending all its time focusing on characters who are not nearly as interesting or dramatically compelling. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.